The car you drive says a lot more about you than just how much money you have. Because a car isn't just transportation. It's a reflection of the stage of life you're currently in. When you're starting from zero, even owning a car can feel like a distant dream. At a net worth of $100,000, you finally have the freedom to make your first real financial choices. At $1 million, you're no longer just buying a car, you're choosing one. At $5 million, people start treating you differently. But here's the interesting part. By the time you reach $100 million, many of the supercars people dream about suddenly lose their appeal. So how does your car change as your wealth grows? And more importantly, how do you change? How does your mindset evolve? How do your priorities shift? Today, we're going from zero to $100 million in net worth to see exactly what that journey looks like. Level 1. Level Bear Ya $M Tech. At this level, you don't even own a car yet. And honestly, buying one probably isn't your biggest concern right now, because the amount of money in your bank account determines whether you'll comfortably make it to the end of the month. You're standing at a bus stop on your way to work. It's raining. Used car listings are open on your phone while you're checking your account balance for the third time today. Maybe you just graduated college. Maybe you landed your first real job. Or maybe you're still trying to figure out what direction your life is heading. But there's one thing that most people at this stage have in common. You're not truly free yet. At this level, your main form of transportation is usually your own 2 feet, a public transit pass, or occasionally a friend's car. And here's the interesting part. Some of the most important financial lessons you'll ever learn happen during this stage of life. Because when money is tight, every mistake becomes visible. A daily coffee, an unnecessary subscription, an impulsive purchase, they all matter. When you get home in the evening, you're watching videos about investing. Some people claim crypto is the answer. Others talk about stocks. Some swear entrepreneurship is the fastest path to wealth. Meanwhile, you're just trying to build your first meaningful savings account. Sometimes you find yourself staring out the window, watching cars drive by, a Mercedes-Benz, a Porsche, a Range Rover. Right now, they feel like they're part of a completely different world. But here's what's fascinating. Most of the people driving those cars were once standing exactly where you are today. At this stage, the most valuable thing you own isn't money, it's time. Because everything you'll eventually have is built on the small decisions you're making right now. Every dollar saved, every extra hour worked, every skill learned, every smart investment. And maybe today you're still waiting at a bus stop, but the day you buy your first car might be closer than you think, because the hardest step in any wealth journey is starting from zero. And you've already taken that step. But once your net worth reaches $100,000, everything starts to change. Level 2. $100,000 net worth. Things are starting to change. At a net worth of $100,000, you're not rich, but you're no longer living in survival mode either. For the first time, you have room to breathe. At this stage, you're probably driving your first real car. Maybe it's a clean Volkswagen Golf, maybe a Toyota Corolla, or maybe a slightly used BMW 3 Series. Whatever it is, this car does more than just get you from point A to point B. It gives you options. You don't have to check bus schedules before work anymore. Your weekend plans aren't tied to public transportation routes. For the first time, you have a little more control over your own time, but you're probably not as comfortable as you look from the outside, because people at this stage usually live 2 different lives. During the day, they're building their careers. At night, they're building their future. After work, you're checking your investment accounts, index funds, stocks, retirement accounts. Money is no longer something you simply spend. It's becoming a tool you can put to work, and the car sitting in your garage reflects that mindset. It's not flashy, but it's smart. Every morning when you get behind the wheel, it reminds you of something important. You're making progress. This is also where many people make their biggest financial mistake. They try to buy success, more expensive watches, bigger loans, more impressive cars. But the people who actually build wealth think differently. Instead of looking wealthy, they focus on building a stronger financial foundation. And that's exactly why a $100,000 net worth is more important than most people realize. Because the car you buy at this stage won't make you look rich, but it might determine whether you become rich in the future. And if you make the right decisions, the next stop arrives much faster than you expect. Because once your net worth reaches $500,000, the rules of the game start changing all over again. Level 3. $500,000 net worth. By the time your net worth reaches $500,000, you've already made it further than most people ever will. Money still matters, but it's no longer the only thing on your mind every day. For the first time, your assets are starting to grow even when you're not working. You have investments. You have savings. Maybe you own a home. And perhaps most importantly, the future no longer feels completely uncertain. The car you drive reflects that progress. At this stage, seeing a BMW 3 Series, an Audi A4, or a Tesla Model 3 in your garage is perfectly normal. These cars aren't bought to impress people. They quietly represent success. Someone looking from the outside might be impressed, but when you get behind the wheel, the car usually isn't what's on your mind. You're thinking about your next investment opportunity, the next step in your career, or a business idea you've been working on. And here's something most people don't realize. Life at this level is often busier than it appears, because building wealth is far more demanding than dreaming about it. You have responsibilities now. You have something to lose. That changes the way you make decisions. You become more careful, more intentional, more focused on long-term outcomes. Even your spending habits begin to change. Flashiness starts losing its appeal. Efficiency starts becoming more important. And the car in your garage tells that story perfectly. It's fast, it's comfortable, it's well built, but its real purpose isn't to attract attention. It's to make your life easier. Because at this stage, you're starting to understand something important. Real wealth isn't about showing people what you own. It's about creating more options for yourself. And once those options begin to multiply, the game starts moving to an entirely different level. Because when your net worth reaches $1 million, you're no longer just someone building wealth. You're someone who truly owns assets that work for you. Level 4. $1 million net worth. A net worth of $1 million. For many people, this number represents financial success. But when you finally reach it, life doesn't magically transform overnight. You wake up the next morning as the same person. The difference is that your money is no longer working only when you are. Your investments, assets, and savings have started working on your behalf. At this level, it's not unusual to see a Porsche 911, a luxury Mercedes, or a high-end Range Rover sitting in your garage. These cars aren't really about showing off. They're more like rewards for years of discipline, patience, and smart decisions. From the outside, everything may look perfect, but most people at this level are still focused on the future, because $1 million isn't the finish line. It's the beginning of a completely different stage of the game. Your decisions now carry more weight. A smart investment can accelerate your wealth dramatically. A bad one can set you back years. That's why, when you're sitting behind the wheel, you're usually not thinking about the car itself. You're thinking about your next move, the next investment, the next business opportunity, the next step toward greater freedom. And somewhere along the way, your definition of wealth begins to change. You stop chasing expensive things simply because they're expensive. Instead, you start valuing flexibility, time, options, and the ability to make decisions on your own terms. Because once your net worth moves beyond a few $1,000,000, success stops being measured by what you own. It starts being measured by the life you're able to create. And at $5 million, people no longer see you as someone who's doing well. They see you as someone who's genuinely wealthy. Level 5. $5 million net worth. By the time your net worth reaches $5 million, you've entered a level most people only dream about. At this point, money has already solved many of life's everyday problems. You don't worry about bills. Unexpected expenses don't keep you awake at night. And payday is no longer something you look forward to. Because wealth is now giving you something far more valuable than comfort. It's giving you options. In your garage, it's perfectly normal to find a Ferrari Roma, a Bentley Continental GT, or a fully loaded Porsche 911 Turbo S. But here's the surprising part. These cars don't excite you the way they once would have, because as wealth grows, priorities begin to change. You stop chasing things and start chasing freedom. More control over your schedule, more flexibility in your life, more opportunities to do what you actually want. At this stage, most people continue working, but not because they need the money. They work because they're building something bigger. Your investments are spread across different assets. Maybe you own multiple properties. Maybe you have ownership stakes in businesses. Maybe your portfolio is generating income while you sleep. Money is no longer coming from a single source. It's flowing from multiple directions. And when you're sitting behind the wheel, your thoughts have changed too. Years ago, you were thinking about your next paycheck. Now you're thinking about your next opportunity, your next investment, your next partnership, your next big move. Because this is where you start realizing what wealth really means. It's not about having more, it's about needing less. But once your net worth reaches $20 million, the game changes again. Because now you're not just wealthy, you're managing serious wealth. Level 6, $20 million net worth. At a net worth of $20 million, the game changes completely. For most people at this level, making money is no longer the goal. The goal is protecting it, growing it, and managing it wisely. Your life is no longer centered entirely around work. The systems you've built continue generating income whether you're working or not. Your investments are working, your businesses are working, your assets are working, and in many cases your time becomes more valuable than your money. In your garage, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, a Bentley Flying Spur, or a custom Ferrari wouldn't be unusual. But what's interesting is that people at this level often care far less about cars than outsiders assume because they've started appreciating things money can't buy. Time, privacy, peace of mind, and freedom. That's why many trips are no longer made from the driver's seat. A chauffeur handles the road while you're sitting in the back reviewing reports, discussing investments, or planning future opportunities. Your relationship with risk changes too. When you were younger, you focused on maximizing gains. Now you're focused on avoiding major losses, because there's something substantial to protect. And for the first time, you clearly understand the difference between looking rich and actually being rich. Most people focus on million-dollar cars. Truly wealthy people focus on systems, investments, and long-term strategy. That's why $20 million isn't just a bigger version of $5 million. It's a completely different mindset. But even this isn't the final level, because once your net worth reaches $100 million, wealth stops changing your life. Instead, you begin deciding what wealth actually means. Level 7, $100 million net worth. A net worth of $100 million. At this point, you're living in a world most people will never experience. But here's the surprising reality. The wealthiest people often live far less extravagantly than most imagine. Because once money reaches a certain level, expensive things start losing their magic. A Ferrari is no longer exciting. A Lamborghini isn't a life goal anymore. Because buying one becomes a simple decision rather than an achievement. That's why your garage may still contain a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a Mercedes S-Class, or a collection of rare vehicles. But the car itself is no longer the point. What matters is the comfort, convenience, and time it provides. In many cases, you're not even driving. A chauffeur is behind the wheel while you're reading, thinking, or discussing your next investment. Because money is no longer the center of your life, impact is. Which companies deserve funding? Which projects deserve support? Which opportunities deserve attention? And what kind of legacy you'll eventually leave behind? Because $100 million isn't just personal wealth. It's the ability to influence businesses, industries, and even future generations. And perhaps the most interesting thing about people at this level is that they rarely feel the need to impress anyone. Because truly powerful people don't need constant proof of their success. The person sitting in the back of a chauffeured Mercedes today is still the same person who once waited at a bus stop with no car at all. The car changed, the garage changed, the lifestyle changed. But the biggest transformation happened inside, the mindset, the priorities, the way they see the world. And maybe that's the real lesson of this journey. As wealth grows, the cars become more expensive, the garages become larger, and life becomes more comfortable. But in the end, what people are truly chasing isn't money, it's freedom. Because real wealth is having the ability to live life on your own terms.